Presenters today is myself, Jason, and then Dan Stevens.
Hello.
Hello, Dan. We are part of the Illinois Learn to Hunt program. So first things first, we always like to start off by talking about regs. We're not going to do a deep dive into that because we've already had a webinar, kind of an intro to upland hunting. We talked a little bit more about it there. But just so you guys know, this year's copy of the Hunter's Digest is now available online, and we highly recommend downloading it so that way you can look at it in case you're in the field and you don't have any access to the internet or something like that, so you can pull it up, you can get a PDF of it, and to look at that as a reference for sure. And you can also find a copy of it, print it out if you're old school. We can also keep one of those in the truck as well, and you can find one of those at Walmart or one of your local bow shops or things like that. They should have received them by now. So when we're talking about upland hunting, there's a lot of animals that fall in upland, especially in the digest. I think dove and squirrel are
Yeah.
considered upland. It's kind of their catch-all for it. But traditionally, it's usually quail and pheasant hunting, as well as partridge and woodcock and other game birds and things like that. So the ones we're going to be talking about today are going to be the ringneck pheasant. Normally, it's going to be the male ringneck pheasant that's going to be the rooster. He's the legal game as well as quail. You can tell they're kind of hard to tell apart from far away. So either male or female is a legal game in this state, whereas the male pheasant is very colorful and has a very long tail. You can tell them apart as soon as they take off flying. You should be able to tell if it's a rooster or a hen. So the rooster, when you're hunting wild birds, is going to be the legal game. When you're doing the controlled pheasant hunt, which is another option for you, then it's rooster or hen pheasants count. But normally, when you're doing the public land or private land and you're just hunting the native population, you're looking for the male pheasant rooster. It's important to understand safety. The main safety points that we like to highlight is just that you understand your zone of fire. If you're in a line of people walking through a field, make sure you have your pizza slice of fire so that way you're not swinging and crossing with someone else who may be next to you. So it's just safety for everybody in that line. So imagine yourself a nice pizza slice in front of you and be like, okay, if the bird's here to here, I'm going to shoot it. If it flies out of my zone, I'm not going to shoot it. So just make
And
sure.
there certainly is some overlap too,
Yeah,
where a bird can be in multiple zones. So don't just think, oh, well, that's probably in his zone, so I can't take that shot. But if it's still in a safe area for you to shoot, there's multiple times where that bird will be in several people's zones, especially as it gets kind of further and further away from your shooting line.
fair enough. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's more of a safety of like not turning and shooting your buddy next to you.
Yeah, yeah.
So not the old school reference, but not pulling a Dick Cheney. So anyway, so yeah, so then there's also looking at birds of flight. So as they take off, and this is really pertinent for today's conversation, talking about dogs, is you wait for that pheasant to get above to where you can see the sky beneath it, depending on your landscape. But usually, if it's high enough where you can actually see the sky beneath its belly, to take a shot at that point. And we're going to get into that with dogs because some dog species may, or not species, but some dog breeds may be prone to jumping at the bird. So some of your flushers might do that. So as it gets higher in the sky, it's easier to shoot and be a safer shot than shooting across the grass at something that just took off or is about to land. And then talking about landing and where the bird's going to fall at, try to understand where, if you shoot the bird, if it's going to fall in a location that's going to be easy to retrieve or is going to be safe for you to go to. So if you're going to be shooting at a bird, I know Dan and I have been hunting before, and we shot a bird that ended up landing in cattails of a pond. Luckily, we were able to go get it, but if it would have went any farther, it would have landed right in the middle of a pond, and that bird would have been lost, and we would have
And
shot it
it
for
was so it
no
was so
reason.
cold, our dogs wouldn't even go in the water to go get the stupid thing.
Yeah,
I had
there's
to
snow on the ground, man.
strip
Yeah.
down and
Yep. So Dan went in up to his skivvies and walked into the freezing water after that bird. And so yeah, so it could land in private land, it could land in a hedgerow, it could land in a big bush, it could land on a road or across the street or something like that. If it's out of your field and lands in a different hunter's field, all the different things that could happen to where it could land somewhere where you cannot retrieve it or it's not safe for you to go. Try to think of that as you're scaring these birds up and taking them down.
yeah, I also want to emphasize a lot of times, especially if it's a really windy day, and we'll kind of get into this some as we kind of get into some, detailed scenarios with the dogs, but there are some conditions where pheasants and quail not so much, but pheasants particularly do not like to fly. If it's super windy or if they're a controlled bird, so they're a bird that's been raised in captivity and released on the landscape for hunters to then go and chase, in many cases it's hard to convince that bird to fly. So I really want to emphasize if a bird is just sitting on the ground, don't take that shot. Force that bird to get up in the air and fly away. And it's kind of the same thing we do with waterfowl hunters, right? A lot of waterfowl hunters, we don't like to shoot ducks as they're sitting on the water. One, it's not very sporty, but two, you're also getting a weird angle for ricochet BBs and stuff like that. So you want to really make sure that that target gets up in the sky, gives you enough room. Like Jason said, blue sky beneath the belly. That's when you take your shot, especially if you're out there with dogs or kids. Always let that bird get in the air. And so I just want to emphasize that because there are some days where you will just struggle to get that bird to fly and they'll just be running in front of you. And we'll talk about some scenarios that you can do to address that in a minute, but just wanted to bring that up now.
Mhm. Another thing, when you're out in the field, you might be going to a spot that's going to have other public land hunters at it. You might just talk to them. And I did a good job of, we went to a controlled pheasant hunt last year, and there was a guy pulled up in a truck. I was taking someone out for the very first time, and he pulled up and he had a kennel attached to his truck. I mean, you could tell that this is something that this guy does and that he's a full bore upland hunter. So I was like, "Hey, you can go first, and we'll just go behind you." My dog's completely a novice. The guy I'm with is a novice. I'm like, "Let's just go, and we'll follow behind you because he's not going to scare all the birds up, even no matter how good his dogs are. He's not going to get all of them." And actually, it worked out for our benefit because he went around the corner and he did scare a bird up, and then it flew right towards us, and we were able to get shots at it in a safe way. And there's only bird we saw that day. So if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have been able to get the bird that we saw or see the bird that we saw. But yeah, just communicate with others, see what their plans are, and then just make a plan. Don't be afraid of other people because you're all there for the same reason. And they're probably thinking the same thing that you're thinking, which is what are these guys' plan and what do they want to do? So by talking to them and understanding that, you can devise on how you're going to walk through those fields and be safe about it.
And
Dan,
I even do it with deer hunters too. Every time
oh
I'm in a
yeah.
park, and there's other, hey, I don't need to know like what tree you're going in, what, ridge you're going to sit on, what direction. And a lot of times, oh, I'm going that way. Okay, cool. I'm going this way. Hey, if you get one, good luck. Maybe I'll help you drag it out if I'm still around, that kind of thing. It just really alleviates a lot of those concerns of, oh, am I going to be encroaching on somebody else's area? So if you just have those conversations right up front, I think it makes the experience a lot more enjoyable for everybody. And obviously today we're talking about bird dogs, and there are some instances where people just don't have the time, the energy, the resources to develop a well-trained bird dog. And that's one thing I've noticed is a lot of upland hunters are willing to add an extra hunter or two to their line, especially if they've got more than one dog. Because typically they want to work their dogs. They've put a lot of time and resources into these dogs. So the more they get to hunt with that dog, the better. And adding another person or two to the line, that increases your bag limit by 2 or 4, depending on how many you add. And so it can really, increase that hunt from an hour or two to maybe 3 or 4. And so there's a lot of times where if I don't, maybe my dog's sick or something and I don't end up bringing it, a lot of times at these areas you can find somebody who's already there and just say, hey, can I just join on your line and work directly over their dog. So definitely talk to other hunters while you're out there. It pays off in dividends.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Dan. If you have your dog too, I mean, dogs' endurance are only so long. I mean, especially if it's
Yes.
hot out. I mean, they're going to get worn out quick. So you could hunt with one dog and then have your dog hang out in the car, and then if it's safe to keep them in the car, but have your dog penned up in the car or whatever, and then use their dog and then go back and grab your dog and have a fresh dog because you won't run out as quick as the dogs will. So that's definitely a good combination of meaning
Yeah,
someone.
my dog she's probably approaching 8 now, and
Mhm.
I get a really good hour out of her for the first run. And then, we'll head back to the car, get her a nice drink, relax for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and then I may get another 45 minutes out of her. And a lot of times that's kind of all you're getting from one dog, especially she's a golden retriever. So if there's snow on the ground, she develops like these snowballs that just grow all around her leg to the point she's like each step is like carrying a couple extra pounds, and so we have to continue to knock that off. But yeah, it's important to make sure you're not overwhelming your dog by just going too long, too hard.
Mhm. So yeah, so real quick, this is the benefits of hunting with a dog. It's gonna really help you cover ground quicker. We've hunted without dogs before, and it's a lot of walking. You're gonna be kicking every bush that's in front of you. Whereas with a dog, they hopefully can use their nose and their agility to cover ground quickly and smell that there's something in front of you or not. And we'll talk about hunting into the wind and stuff here in a second. But uh,
I
so yeah,
did see real quick, Jason, we had somebody in the chat say somebody was trying to get in. I did just admit somebody with that same last name can you just let us know if that's the correct person, Kim, or if there's somebody else that's still trying to hop in? Thanks.
Mhm. Yeah, I'll check our Gmail real quick. No one's in our Gmail right now. So yeah, so dogs clearly give you an advantage when it comes to bird hunting. They're going to be able to get to spots that you're not going to get to. They're going to cover more ground than you're going to cover, and they're going to be able to smell things that you can't smell. So all those advantages come with bringing a bird dog. So for safety, you never. Awesome. They got in. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
So you never like lean. I think it's actually a ticket in some states. If you have a loaded gun leaning against a vehicle, that could be a ticket depending on where you're at, what state you're in. Don't lean your gun against the vehicle, especially when a dog's running around. You need to have extra muzzle. But when it comes to, long story short, muzzle control, and you usually have muzzle control when you're thinking about your friends and things. But now when a dog's running around, you want to have your muzzle up. So sometimes when you're walking around with humans, you can have a muzzle down on the ground, and that's a safe spot to have your muzzle, like in the picture pictured above. But then your muzzle should be up in the air in a safe direction, so that way the dog doesn't run in front of you quickly while your muzzle's pointed down. So always have your muzzle up. Always have your finger off the trigger or out of the trigger guard when you're not ready to shoot. Always have even your action open if you're not about to walk through a field, and so that way it just keeps accidents from happening. So yeah, any other tips you got there, Dan, for safety?
Yeah, one thing I like to emphasize, especially to new upland hunters, and it was something. So, just for some backstory, the first thing I ever hunted growing up was quail. We had a little 40-acre farm in southern Missouri. We had a decently trained Weimaraner, which is a pointing breed, and so we got to do quite a bit of quail hunting growing up. And I just remember vividly the first time I ever flushed up a covey of quail, which quail, when they roost at night, they roost in groups of like 10 to 15. We call it a covey. So it's a group of quail all together. And it's one of those things that you always think you have to rush. You're always like, oh my gosh, I got to get that shot off before those birds get far away. You have a lot more time than you realize, especially if we're talking pheasants. Pheasants are big, they're slow, they're not the most gracious flyers in the world. I mean, they're both these species, quail and pheasants, are what we consider gallinaceous birds, so they're ground nesting. And so over time they've evolved. They have fairly poor flight muscles, but they have huge breasts and big legs because that's how they kind of survive, is running around on the ground. So they're not great flyers. And so one of my biggest tips in terms of safety is when you flush that first bird, you have a lot more time before you need to take a shot than you think. And in many cases, especially if you're hunting with, let's say, a pointer where you're right next to that dog as it flushes that bird, you really want to let that bird get some distance from you. If you think about the way a shotgun functions, as that shot cloud leaves your muzzle, it slowly expands as it gets further and further away from the target. So if you're taking a shot at a pheasant that's 10 yards away or so, you're basically trying to hit a moving target with no sights with almost a single projectile. And
Nope, Dan, you glitched on me. I don't know if it glitched for everyone else. If you guys can put that in the comments, if Dan
that
it's
bird
also
gets
glitched.
further away, your shot cloud's going to get much bigger. And so hopefully it makes that shot easier, but also again, you're going to save a lot of meat because you're not just destroying it by basically overwhelming that target. So again, that's my biggest safety tip. Obviously, what I'll use Jason is extremely important, but a big one that I see from a lot of new hunters is just patience, patience, patience. When that bird flushes, you have time, get your mount proper, make sure you're safe, zone of fire, let the blue sky underneath that belly, and then take the shot.
Yeah. Yep. So also just like the etiquette of working with a dog handler. Talk to the if you're have a friend who's a dog handler, you should already have that kind of relationship with them and understand how they use their dog. But if you're going to maybe an outfitter or someone, have them tell you how they want you to hunt over their dog. They're going to tell you to not give it. Usually, you do not talk to the dog. You almost just act like the dog is like in front of you and just doing its own thing, and you just be quiet and wait for a bird to go off. And the handler will be the one talking to the dog. It will be the one who retrieves the bird from the dog, and giving the dog any type of commands. So basically, you are just along for the ride when it comes to when you're with someone and a dog. So yeah,
In reality, even when you're the handler, a lot of times you're just along for the ride too.
that too. Yeah, you're just at the will of the dog, and you're hoping it's
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So that's the main thing. Is just don't worry about like it's almost like a working dog. And when you go to the airport and you see a bomb sniffing dog, you're not petting it or whatever. So just let the dog be alone and go do its thing. Go ahead, Dan. I think we're
Excellent.
going to cover from here.
Yeah, so now we'll kind of talk about like the practical aspects. What does it look like hunting with a dog? One of the most important aspects of upland hunting, and if you're a deer hunter, you're already attuned to this. You're attuned to paying attention to what that wind direction is doing. It's very important for upland, not necessarily for the same reasons. With deer hunting, we're trying to not let the deer smell us, where in this case, we are actually trying to get the dog to smell the bird. And so working with the wind is advantageous for a few reasons. One, it's going to push that scent directly to the dog, which is advantageous. But two, it also allows for a little bit of a stealthier approach for us as the hunters and as the dog. Because if you think about it, wind does carry sound. And so if you're walking with the wind at your back and it's blowing straight down the field to the birds, it's going to carry some of that sound with you. And that's one of pheasants' kind of big predator avoidance detections. One is their eyesight. They have incredible eyesight. Luckily, they're tucked in grasses, so we don't really have to worry about them seeing us, but they can hear us approaching. And so playing that wind, having it carry the scent of the birds to us and to the dog is really what we're looking for. And one of the big things it also does is forces the bird to fly a specific way. When pheasants like to take off, they like to take off into the wind. So they can kind of get that wind beneath their wings. It allows them to get lift and elevation very quickly. And so many times, again, the wind in your face is bringing the scent, keeping the sound down, and also hopefully forcing them to fly away from you, which is kind of an ideal shot scenario. And this kind of graphic here is just a very quick illustration of some patterns that the dog will work. Every dog is a little bit different. And we'll talk about there's kind of two types of bird dogs, and we'll get into those a little bit. But this is kind of a really rough estimation where you want that bird kind of walking back and forth past the hunter. And if you have 4 or 5 people on the line, all scattered out, 10 yards, that may be a 30 or 40-yard line. Chances are the dog's not going to run that far, and you may not want them to just because you're going to wear out that dog a lot quicker than if it just stays, at the 20. And so oftentimes if I'm hunting with a big group, I may even condense the line if I only have, one dog to where we're, maybe 5 to 7 yards apart from each other. Still gives us plenty of good safe zones of fire, but just reduces that distance that dog has to work back and forth and back and forth. So I mentioned there's kind of two groups of dogs. Every bird hunter you ask is going to have a different opinion on whether they hunt with a flusher or a pointer. And then they're going to have a different opinion on what the best breed is. So don't take anything we say with gospel here. Everybody you ask is going to have a different opinion. Now, there's two big differences, or really just one big difference between these two groups. And the biggest one is how they approach a bird once they find it. A flusher, its job is to find a bird and get it up in the air as quick as possible. It's not going to alert you. It's not going to sit there and stare at the bird. It smells a bird, it's going to chase the bird, and it's going to try to get the bird to fly away. On contrast, we have the pointer. So a pointer is what most people are familiar with when they think of an upland dog. We have a great picture of a pointer down here in the bottom right where it's a very nice looking point where that bird or that dog finds a bird and holds that bird in that spot until the handler comes and either flushes the bird, or some handlers will allow the pointer to then sneak in and flush the bird itself. Everybody's a little bit different, but that's the big thing. And if you think about how that will change your hunting strategy, it changes it drastically. When you're with a flusher, a lot of times you don't have any indication that dog is getting ready to flush a bird. You may just be walking and then you just hear, and that bird takes off. Or a pointer, you're gonna see that dog go on point, and you're gonna have time to walk up to it slowly. You don't want to walk up too fast to where you scare the bird and it just takes off anyway. But slowly approach that dog that's on point, and then you have time to get set and then flush the bird. So it really does drastically change how you hunt. And one of the big things it changes is how far you can allow that dog to work in front of you. So I hunt with golden retrievers. So they're what we would consider a flusher dog. They don't point, they just find a bird, get it in the air. I don't want my dog to work any further than like 30 yards is max. In reality, I like her to stay between 10 and 20. And what that does is, let's say she's working out 50 yards and she flushes a bird. That's already outside of my effective range. All we did was just flush a bird, which she probably enjoyed it. She got to do what she's trained to do, but I didn't get to do what I'm there to do. And then she'll give you a look like, oh, why didn't you shoot? Because they get mad when you either A, don't shoot, or miss. But so that's a big advantage of a pointer is you can let that pointer work out further in front of you because when it finds a bird, it's going to go on point. It's going to hold that bird until you and the line approach, and then the handler will give the command to either give the command to the dog to go ahead and flush it, or the handler will pull back the dog and go up and flush it himself. Every handler's a little bit different, but I hope you can start to see the two big differences between these two groups, because they're quite big. Now, one thing I really like to point out, and this is some of the terminology that you'll kind of hear us throughout, is this term that I'll use a lot. It's called birdie. Every dog has a different like way of showing that they're birdie, but a handler will be able to pick up on it quite quickly with their own dog. But they all start to get a little excited, get enthusiastic, and you can tell their behavior changes when they get on fresh scent of a bird. So my specific golden, her tail starts going crazy, her ears go back a little bit, and her nose goes straight to the ground the second she gets on scent. If she's just checking, that nose is up in the air trying to catch the scent coming in the wind. But once she finds scent, that nose is on the ground and the tail's going, the whole butt's wagging, and she's just running straight at that bird. So you'll start to pick up on each dog's individual behaviors to let you know it's getting birdie. But if you're out there with an experienced handler, oftentimes you'll just hear people online getting birdie, and that just kind of lets everybody know, hey, the dog's found some kind of scent. It may be old scent that the bird's already moved on, but it kind of means just kind of get ready. It's just a nice warning for the rest of the line. Now, pointing breeds, they are a blast to hunt over. My next Upland dog will probably be a pointer. I've had pointers in my life. We grew up with Weimaraners, which are a German, kind of very short haired pointer. And now I have golden retrievers, which I love them because they're great family dogs, great home dogs. But they're also good flushers, and they're great retrievers for ducks and geese too. So again, everybody's got their own preference. But the nice thing about pointing breeds, again, is you get that indication that that bird's on point. And especially if you're a new hunter or taking, youth, it really allows you to get everybody set, get ready in a much more controlled environment, where a flushing dog can be quite chaos. It really So here are some really popular pointing breeds. Again, everybody's got their own opinion. The two that I probably see the most of in Illinois is probably going to be the GSP, the German short hair pointer. I think that's probably the most common I see anywhere, really, followed by either a Brittany or an English setter. Every dog breed has its own temperament, has its own sizes, its own advantageous. Now, one thing I'll be honest about again, I grew up with Weimaraners, which they're the bottom picture in the middle row. This kind of gray looking pointer with the orange collar. Loved that breed, loved that dog. One of the big reasons why, nothing stuck to its coat. It had a very short coat. It was very, very tight. It was almost not greasy or oily, but stuff just wiped right off it. Now I have golden retrievers. So when I take that dog hunting, it's a 30 to an hour and a half process when I get home of combing the hair, making sure I get all those seeds out, getting all those briars, every little bit of fluff, giving it a nice bath. And so don't just think about the hunting, think about all the prep work, living with this dog. There's a lot of things that go into selecting a good dog breed. But just kind of wanted to bring that up.
Mhm.
So one thing I really want to point out, we talk about hunter etiquette in this webinar, is what to look for when a dog goes on point, especially if you've never interacted with a pointer before. That dog will basically tell you exactly where the bird is by its eyes. And so if it's got a high head, meaning it's just kind of looking, it really just like it's looking off in the distance, off in the horizon, that means that bird's probably still 10 to 20 feet away. Now, most handlers like to get their dog a lot closer to that. A lot of times they like to what we call pin the bird, where they will pretty much get within, 3 to 5 feet of that bird, go on point. And a really well-trained pointer actually knows how to hold that bird. So the bird will start to pick up on that a dog is there, and it may start to walk. It may start to try to sneak away. And a very highly trained pointer will actually circle around and basically pin that bird and not let it escape, and basically force it to stay there until the hunter then comes up and flushes. So pay attention to the angle of that pointer's head, and then just look at its eyes, see where his or her eyes are pointing. And chances are they're pointing right where that bird's going to be. Just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. I promise. There has been so many times where I'm like, there's like a nothing. It's just like almost bare dirt with a little bit of grass, and you're like, how is there a bird there? But it's on, walk over there, and boom, it flushes out of nowhere. So just because you can't see it with your eyes, trust your dog, trust the
Yep.
dog, trust the
We were
dog.
hunting last winter, and we had friends with us that had a pointer. And I was next to you. I was with you. I was recording you. It was a mentored hunt. We had a lot of new people out, and we were on. We had gotten to the end of the push, and we were next to a road, a dirt road that separated the fields. And we were sitting there, and then we were having this whole conversation, and then we looked down there, one dog, and it was on point the whole time we were talking.
We were just sitting there,
And
yeah, just
yeah,
BSing.
I'm
Yeah.
like, "Is your dog on point right now?" And then they're like, "Oh, yeah." And then we all I stepped back to let the mentor shoot and everything, and then as sure as heck they kicked the bush and then the bird flew right out of there. Yeah, I mean it's insane where the birds can be hiding at, and the dog is sitting there like, "Hey guys." Yeah,
I'm telling it's right here. It's right here.
yeah.
And that's what's so fun about a pointer is if that dog is convinced there's a bird there, you will not be able to break that dog's concentration until the handler either says no bird and gives them their release command, or they flush the bird. But that's such a good point to bring up. And even if you're not hunting with dogs, I think this is a pretty important point because so many people when they walk through a pheasant field, you're just humans walk at a very consistent pace, right? We walk straight line at a consistent pace. We just go. Wildlife doesn't do that. And so pheasants actually, many times you might walk right by a pheasant if you're just walking at a normal pace. They know they are very good at trusting their camouflage in their habitat. And so if they think you're going to walk right by, a buck will do the same thing. If you're walking at a consistent pace, but if you get to a point and you stop, that's when the animals start getting okay, something's on to me, something knows I'm here, something knows I'm here, and then they flush. So don't just, even if you're not hunting with a dog and you're just hunting through a pheasant field, walk at a weird pace. Maybe walk 15, 20 steps, stop for a few seconds, go at a different angle, stop, try to sound like you're something actually hunting and stalking an animal, and it might force that reluctance that, oh, I'm just going to sit here and hunker down, I feel safe in this spot, to, oh crap, it's on to me, I got to flush, I got to go. So keep that in mind, even if you're not hunting with dogs.
Yep, and that goes across species too. That goes for rabbits and anything you're doing a drive for or anything like that. You're
Yeah, and
like,
even I've started to even apply it when I'm walking to my deer stand.
yeah,
I think so many people feel like you have to be like this stealthy, silent, completely invisible person out in the woods. And there's some truth to that. You don't want to, metal clanking around from your stand on your back. But I feel like just walking and there's always animals moving on the forest floor, and if
hmm
you just mimic that natural, take a few steps, stop, break up the cadence of just a human walking, I think it allows you to get away with a lot more than you'll ever think you do.
absolutely. Yeah, just give yourself enough time to walk an
Yeah,
extra
yeah,
20
yeah.
minutes longer than you might have.
And for me that helps out too, because normally by the time I get to a deer stand I'm covered in sweat, my glasses are fogged up, and yeah,
Yep,
so taking
run
it
into
slow
the thing.
never bad.
Yeah.
So let's say you're out on a pheasant hunt, you're with a pointer, that pointer finds a bird, it's on point. What's the next step? Even if that's a well-trained pointer, you still may get what people will call a wild flush, where that bird will just start to feel too uncomfortable and just flush before everybody's completely ready. So the second that bird goes on point, it's pretty advantageous to get the rest of the line moving up. Remember, we want to hunt in a straight line with upland hunting. If no matter how many people you have, if it's two people, if it's five, if it's 10, you want to walk in a very consistent straight line. And it's something you'll hear if you're on my line, I do it constantly. I will tell people, hey, Jason, you need to pick up the pace, or Lauren, you're going way too slow, you need to speed up, or hey, I've got a bush in front of me, I need you guys to hold a second because I'm going to have to make a swing around, so if you guys keep walking. And so we're always communicating to try to keep everybody at the same pace and at the same line. Now the person who sets that line is the dog handler. The dog handler sets the pace for the line, it basically manages the line. So it's kind of their role to point these things out. Now, I do like to tell everybody on the line, hey, communicate the whole time. If you're the last person over there and you see us, dilly daggy and we're way behind, yell at us. We're not like mad at each other. We're just trying to keep everyone in that same line.
Yeah.
So hopefully by the time that dog goes on point, you're already all in a consistent, safe line. And all you have to do is just slowly approach that dog to the line. At that point, go ahead and get your gun in a safe position. And at this point, it really Everybody on the line realistically should be doing this because you never know if that bird's going to flush up and cut right, flush up and cut left, or just go straight out. If it goes straight out, heck, a lot of people on that line can get a shot. If it
Hmm.
flushes out and then to the left, you may have a couple people on the left that are able to get a shot at it until you get it down. So once you get an indication, I like to tell everybody get on the line, get ready, just because you never know. And there's some cases where it may be more than one bird. Again, quail, you're going to flush, anywhere from 10 to 20. 25 is a really big covey if you get lucky. Pheasants, you're normally flushing a single bird, but there are times where you may flush one and the shots may even cause another one to flush. So always be prepared for that. So just always get ready on that line. And again, we talked a little bit about looking at the dog so that he can kind of see, or you can kind of visually try to figure out where exactly that pheasant is at that he's looking at. And again, pay attention to runners. A lot of times, a well-trained pointer will sneak behind a runner. So if that pheasant starts running, that dog will just slowly creep its point. He'll just he doesn't want to do it so fast that he flushes it, but just very, very slow, very consistent. Now, if you're getting to the point where every bird you try to flush is running, it gets a little tough, but what we can do is push them into an area that forces them to flush, whether it's a mowed strip in the middle of a prairie grass. They don't want to be out in the open. They need that good, prairie grass coverage to keep them safe, to keep them concealed. So if they have to run across an open area, it may force them to flush. Or if there's a forest edge that you can push them to and to against, sometimes you can get them to force a flush that way. At that point, again, follow runners kind of just went through all of this. Again, please don't shoot a pheasant on the ground, especially if there's dogs anywhere out in the field. Let that bird get, like we said, blue sky beneath the belly is pretty much the easiest thing to ever remember. It ensures that your gun is pointed above the horizon, is angled up, completely safe from everybody out in the field. Now, this is where it depends on the handler themselves with a pointer. Again, I mentioned sometimes the handler will let the dog flush. They'll give a release command to let the dog sneak up and flush the bird. The vast majority of the pointers that I've worked with and the handlers that I've hunted with prefer to hold the dog and then they will go and flush the bird. It
Hmm.
does a couple things. One, there's a lot of people who think that increases the likelihood that that bird is going to be recovered by the dog. So if you let that dog flush, he's going to be so excited he's not going to be watching, he's going to be moving. But if you hold that dog and then go flush the bird, that dog's sitting there staring. And so it will visually watch that bird fly and then watch it fall. It will mark that and then you give the command for it to go. So there's a lot of people who prefer to hold the dog and flush it themselves so that they can get the dog looking at the bird flying to make sure it can recover it easily. Watch for the bird to flush. It's usually going to be in cover, and if it's a rooster, it's going to be loud. Everybody on the line will hear it. It has a weird cackle. You're going to hear the big wings beating against the prairie grass. Whoever sees that bird first and can correctly identify whether it's a hen or a rooster needs to call it out. If you don't feel confident at that point, let somebody else on the line do it. But we always rooster, rooster, or no bird, no bird. We don't ever say hen. We just say rooster or no bird. And what that does is if we hear rooster, everybody instantly on the line knows the bird in the air is a legal bird. I don't even have to think about it. I can now just focus on shooting. If it's no bird, we know that's a hen. We need to let that bird go. It's not legal game. Again, if you're in a controlled pheasant site, it's hard to confuse. I hate this because it can get
I know.
confusing. But if you're at a controlled pheasant site, you can shoot females. So kind of talking wild birds here. But still, even when I'm a controlled pheasant, I'll still yell rooster, rooster. Just it builds that good confidence, it's just a safe feature too. And it also
Muscle
just lets
memory.
everybody on the line know that, hey, it's a rooster in the air.
And that way you don't yell hen because it's a hen and then you're still shooting at the hen. You're like, yeah, just yell rooster
Yeah,
for
yeah.
everything.
Rooster
Yeah.
and no bird are the two best commands anybody on the line can say. Again, if it's a legal bird, so everyone yelled rooster, it's in your zone of fire. Take your shot. The second you're done shooting, return your firearm to safe. And then this is where it's very important to rely on the handler. On my line with my dogs, I normally want people to stop and just wait. If we continue pushing, again, I hunt with a flusher. If we continue pushing before it gets that bird, it may find another bird and go flush it. And then it pretty much lost its mental note of where that one is. And so personally, I like to hold the line, let the bird go or let the dog go retrieve the bird and bring it back. And Jason emphasized this a little bit. Do not give commands to somebody else's dog because everybody uses different commands. I'm very much what I call a hand gesture. So we trained our dogs very early on in just obedience training to constantly look at me, watch my hands. My hands will tell you everything I need to do. And so my commands are very simple. I have a whistle and I'll hit one whistle and my dog knows to stop, to look at me, and then I can point and cast with my hands and say, I need you to go that way. I need you to go that way. And so if it happened to not see where that bird fell, I can at least start pointing it in the right direction so that then it can start relying on its nose to then recover that bird. But again, I really like to have everybody on the line just still. And you guys can talk, do your thing, reload your shotguns. I just don't want to be pushing the field anymore until we get those birds back in hand.
And back to the benefits of having a dog, this may be even more important than picking the birds up is retrieving the birds because there
Yes.
are some habitats out there where I described it in another way, especially like dove hunting. You basically take a baseball and throw it into a field and go find it. I mean, it's
In a field of like 6 foot tall prairie grass. Yeah.
yeah. So having a dog that can either smell it out or be able to watch it fall and then go and have a dog that's that capable would be amazing. So yeah, this is a huge benefit of having a dog with you for sure.
It certainly can be done without, we talked about it in the one-on-one, so I'll just kind of reiterate a few because I've hunted plenty of times without my dogs. If I'm traveling or even if the weather's really bad, I will leave my dogs at home in some cases.
Hmm.
But my biggest tip is same with deer hunting. When you shoot something, take as many mental notes of the path that that thing is taking on your way out. Notice mental note where, and there's some cases I'll take out my phone, put my finger, take a picture. Okay, I saw it next to that tree, there. Same with pheasants. The second you shoot, and one thing I like to do, like when Jason and I hunt, and let's say we don't have a single dog. Let's say Jason shot a bird. I watched it fall. I will stand exactly where was standing, and I will not take my eyes off of where I saw that bird fall, and I will just keep directing Jason until he gets to that area. And then at that point, you usually have to look around for a few minutes, but it can be done. So don't just think, oh, if I don't have a dog, I can never be an upland hunter. Again, you can, but dogs certainly make the process easier. And for me, I'm not even sure if I didn't have upland dogs that I would upland hunt. For me, that's like the best part about it is getting to spend time with friends and family and my dogs.
Yeah.
Watching the dogs is special.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know we talk about trying to recruit people to go hunting, and a lot of times the dogs do it for us. There's people out there that
Yeah.
get a sporting dog. You might take it for a walk in the park one day and see how engaged it is to squirrels or to the doves in the park or pigeons in the park, and they realize like, wow, this thing really is bred to do something. I feel bad that I'm not giving it the opportunity to do the thing that it would love to be doing right now. So then they actually get into hunting because they got the dog to begin with, which is pretty neat.
Yeah, we have quite a few stories like that, and it's something I always like to point out too. Is the dogs already have this drive and this motivation to hunt, especially if you and this is where you can spend as much on a dog as you want. I'll be honest, the two golden retrievers that we bought as pets. They were bought as family home dogs that just happen to be pretty darn good at hunting. If you go the bloodline track and you start looking at highly credentialed dogs, you're going to put out some money, but those dogs come with a pedigree and they come with that innate desire and motivation to really do this stuff. And a lot of the training is just refining those instincts already.
Hmm.
Um, but back to recovering the bird, I think this is a really important one, and this is one I honestly didn't know was as big of an issue until I hunted with one of our friends, and his dog does not does not like to give that bird to anybody except the handler. It doesn't matter who shot the bird. That dog is giving it to the handler. If anybody else tries to grab it, I don't want to say the dog gets aggressive, but it gets defensive. And no, this is mine to give to my owner. So don't, even if that dog runs right by you, don't try to grab that bird from the dog. Let it take it back to the handler. Unless the handler tells you, yeah, go ahead and grab the bird. But 9 times out of 10, that dog will always take it back to the handler.
Hmm.
So now this is my bread and butter, hunting with flushers. They're fun, it's chaotic, it's enjoyable. but there are a few really important things to keep in mind, and we've reiterated a few times, so I'm sorry, but please let that bird get high enough in the sky that you get blue sky beneath the belly. You can see this perfect picture in the top right. I mean, that
Mhm.
is about as textbook of an illustration of a flushing dog that I've ever seen. Every single time my dog flushes a bird, it's leaping up in the air. A lot of times it'll even grab onto a tail feather or two and be able to pull that down. So please let that dog or let that bird get high enough in the air that it gets completely away from that bird before you ever even point, before you ever even bring your gun up. Let that bird get away again. You'll have more time. Now, the one advantage I find of hunting with flushing breeds is I personally I find it a little more enjoyable, because there's always that thrill that it could almost happen at every second. Now, obviously with a pointer, I mean the same thing's happening, but you get that momentary, okay, I kind of get ready. Where with a flusher, it's just chaos. It's just they smell it and that bird's going up in the air and they're trying to chase after it. So but the one thing, and this is where you heard me kind of describe the term birdie a little bit earlier. This is where I find it to be very important is for on the flusher side of things. Again, a pointer, it's going to go on point. It's going to give you that strong indication that it's on a bird. A flusher is really not going to give you that. The only thing it's going to give you is a little bit of excitement and just a slight behavior change to let you know that, yep, I'm on scent, I'm on scent, I'm on scent, but flush. And it's really that quick. So here's just kind of a quick list of popular flushing breeds. I've hunted with many of these breeds through the years. I've hunted over a poodle, obviously my golden retrievers, cocker spaniels, Chesapeake Bay retrievers, water spaniels, Brittany's, Boykin spaniel is another one I've hunted over that we don't have on. Oh, it is on this list. Yeah. So there's a lot of different breeds out there. Again, try to find one that fits with your motivations, your desires, and that's what for me is really interesting about training a dog is I'm personally not interested in like field trials and competing. That's a whole separate world. People love that. That's their life. They want to go out and show how good their dog is. For me, I want a dog that I can take home. It can live on my couch for, 355 days out of the year, but the other 10 days we get to go explore and hunt. And so I have trained my dog to be more what I consider a gun dog. And so it picked up on being able to flush pheasants just kind of naturally. But what I really focused on was retrieving because now not only can I do pheasants, I can do some rabbits, I can do waterfowl. I've even done squirrels with her and shot a few squirrels and let her bring the squirrels back to me. So there's a lot of different things you can do. And so I think it's important to give that thought up front if you're looking at getting a bird dog and decide what all you have an interest in. What are those features and those traits that you're looking for? Are you looking for something that's very high energy and high maintenance? Or do you want something that's a little low energy, low maintenance that you may not be able to hunt, 50 times a year with, but when you do hunt with, it'll still be a great experience. So just something to certainly think about. And again, I really want to emphasize this distance aspect of a flusher. I've seen it many a times, even when I'm hunting with some of my friends that have dogs, they will let their flushers get way too far out in front to where any bird they flush, we don't have a realistic chance of ever taking an ethical or even effective shot at. And so I really like that bird, that flusher to work 10 to 30, 25 is ideal for me. That's kind of the distance I like. And now I have personally trained my dog a little bit differently that I kind of showed you that illustration. I don't know if I have a slide. Okay, well, here's a decent illustration. So you can kind of see how this snakes forward. What I have actually trained my dog to do is almost figure eights where it will actually come behind me. Because I noticed, again, she's a good dog. I don't train her near as much as I should
Mhm.
that in a little bit, but there are birds she misses on a first pass. And so for me, I like to be able to get her to circle. And so she'll come behind me and give a second scent check just in case she misses a bird. And it does occasionally happen. And so she'll run right by me and do kind of a nice figure eight and just start casting back and forth, trying to pick up on any scent that's kind of, being pushed through that field by the wind. Once she starts to pick up on scent, a lot of time it's going to be what we consider air scent. So she's up here smelling it, smelling it, smelling it, trying to find some directionality of it. Once she does, she's going to head in that direction. And then that's when she's starting to look for ground scent. So it's identify that scent in the air, head that direction, find ground scent, find the bird, flush, boom. And it really is that quick. But that kind of shows why it's so important to not let that flusher get that far ahead.
Mhm.
Because if it picks that air scent, runs another 15 yards, and then has to ground scent for another 5 or 10, by that time you're already well past your effective range. So keep those flushers close. Keep them close.
And Dan, I know I do. I got two Springer Spaniels, so I also have flushers as well. And I've taken one of them out. The other one still was young, and I didn't get a chance to take them out yet last year. But they're not really well trained. Again, they're more pets than anything like that. But when I do get the one out, I use a 40-foot lead on them, and I don't even give them all the 40 feet. So even if you have a dog that's not trained or not doesn't is going to go 50 yards, it might not run away, and it'll come back when you call it. If I let him loose, they probably would do that, but he's going to go 50, 60, 70 yards in front of me, and then I can call him back. But since I know that's going to happen, I can use that leash on him and train him that way. So if you
Sure.
have a dog
Yep.
and you're starting to train them, or if you're worried they're going to get away from you, they have those leads that
Yeah, I'm
allow
a big
you
fan
to
of
get out
these. And
there.
even my dog has one of my dog, my older golden has fantastic recall to the point that I can just snap my finger, like literally a snap, and she's coming. My younger one, not so much. So when I take the younger one along, I will, what I like to, I think there's probably a technical term for it. I just call it slack line, where I will literally just tie a nice 50-foot lead and just let it trail behind her. That
Mhm.
way, at any point, I can step on it and give her that reaffirm, no, you're getting too far, stay close. Now, there are certainly times where it gets like tangled and it gets a little annoying. But again, for me, yeah, it works out well.
Yep. And then also to go
If
back
I
to
if I had, the insane disposable income and I could afford one of the electronic GPSs and stuff and all those fancy gadgets, I probably would. But for me, that seems to work out well.
absolutely, yeah. Once you buy one of those, you have to go enough times to justify the
You
purchase.
do, you
You
do.
just don't have the time. But to go back to just the inherent ability inside these dogs is just so crazy. I mean, when I walk with the Springer, he does exactly what your dog does. He goes behind me. If I walk past him, instead of just coming back over to my right, he'll dip behind me every single time. And I mean, it's just a behavior that's bred into him to basically just be circling or be weaving back and forth. Like I'll walk him down the road and he just weaves going back and forth, going walking down just a regular road, let alone in a grassy field. So it's just
Yeah,
so
for
cool.
me, the casting, like you said, was very, very natural for the dog. For me, the hardest thing I struggled training was gun shyness. Now, our
Hmm.
first dog, the older golden, she was adopted, so we're not really sure like the backstory. But when we got her, I mean, if there's an extension cord across the ground, she won't walk over it. She's just like a chicken. She's terrified of everything. And so that was the hardest thing for me to break, was getting her used. And I didn't, this is one thing that I think some people probably mess up on. You can scare your dogs too early by exposing them to gunshots too quick. And so what I did, and this is kind of how I like to train everything, is in very small increments. So I first started just loud claps, treat, loud clap, treat. And I started getting that noise louder. I'd bang something else that made a little bit noise, treat, and just show her this is, it's fine. You're good. Nothing's wrong. That positive reinforcement goes so long. And so for me, that was the hardest thing I trained. But like you said, the casting was very natural. The nose was already there. And so it was really just exposing that dog to the note, to the scent that I wanted it to smell.
Hmm.
But a lot of this is kind of the same. Kind of went over this. I actually just talked about this. But again, just think about all the different aspects of your life that you want to use a dog for, and don't be afraid to reach out to groups. There are, for every breed that's out there, there's a group. There's a German short hair pointer group of America. There's a German short hair pointer club of Illinois. There's all these different groups. There's the was it National Versatile Dog Hunting Association, NAVDA. There's these huge groups that are just people who like to train dogs, like really high quality upland dogs. And so just bounce ideas off of them. Do a little bit of cursory research. But one of my biggest advice is check out this website. So this is on Pheasants Forever's website, and they have a really, in my opinion, really good breakdown of different breeds, what their temperament's like, what their experience is like, what you can expect with a dog like this. Do you want one that again is very high energy to where you're having to run the thing an hour or two a day, or do you want something a little bit more on the lazy side that allows you to work when your time and your energy allows as well? And so there's a lot that goes into it. But a couple things that I think right off the bat, I think are pretty immediate purchases For me, it was this stuff. Now, I'm not recommending a specific brand, and sorry if that's reversed. It probably is. The cameras are weird. Physics
No,
is
it's all
weird.
right.
But it's basically just pheasant scents.
Mhm.
Again, I'm not tied to this brand in any way, shape, or form. This is just what my local Field and Stream at the time before they closed happened to have on the shelves, and it works well. You dilute it a little bit with water, so make sure you read the back because it is a little potent, and you don't want to train your dog with too much scent that it becomes, I don't know if unrealistic is the right word, but if it gets used to training on so much scent, and then when it goes out into the prairie and it's not finding that level of scent that it's used to looking for, it may not hit on that scent. And so you want to dilute it quite a bit and start off very, very small. And honestly, what I would do the first like couple months that I was starting to approach this, and my dog's probably 6, 7 months old at this point in time,
Mhm.
I'm just spraying this a little bit, exposing her to it. Treat exposure to that scent. This scent means treat. And then over time, I'd start hiding it around the house. And then I'd make it harder and harder. And then I'd start taking it outside. And then I'd start throwing it a little bit. And so it's really just building on these fundamentals and just view it as this step-by-step process. If you go out and you just start throwing this thing at 50 yards and telling your dog go get, they're not going to.
Mhm.
You want to start off slow, start off small, and have fun with it. That's the best advice I can give is to have fun with it. If you're having fun with it, the dog's having fun with it. If the dog's having fun with it, they're going to keep doing it. That's kind of my best advice for training. Again, I'm not a dog trainer by any way, shape, or form. There are some really good platforms on the internet. Now, once we're done with this PowerPoint, I'll pull one up that I think is quite nice. I have a few friends who've done it over the years. It is a little expensive, but it's essentially you're buying a library of training materials that walk you through. Basically, you got a dog. Here's what you're going to do in week one. Here's what you're going
Mhm.
to do in week two, week three, week four, and just slowly builds into that really high quality dog that you're looking for.
I would say the
There are
other,
a couple.
oh,
Oh, go
sorry to
ahead.
cut you off, but the other thing with training would be that I would say it's more repetition and consistency than
100%.
than time in one spot. So if you do like a good 10 minutes a day, like for the first while, that's all you really need. I mean,
Yeah,
even
10,
less than
10
that.
minutes a day is better than like 1 hour a week. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. 100. Right there, you summed it up perfectly with that. Yep. Yeah, so just don't. Yeah, and you can annoy your dog to the point where it doesn't like doing it anymore. Like it has to be still fun for him, and don't give him a chance to kind of get bored with it and start not going after the bird. Like if you start throwing it in the backyard and then they get bored, then they go and grab a ball or something else. Like there's only so many times it's gonna care to play with
That's
you.
that's a really good point. That was another thing I struggled with our younger golden, our older golden Tessa. She is a fan. I could play. She's a ball dog. I could fetch with that dog literally hours a day. She'll never stop bringing it. Younger one, 4 or 5 throws, she's out of it. She's on to something else. And so it took time. And like you said, once she stopped, we were done. I wasn't going to push it and try to get her to force it. Just once she's and just start rewarding every time she does, make the reward better. And one thing I'm a big fan of is positive reinforcement. So not only with treats, but like show that dog you're excited, get excited for it, especially when it does something successful. I think the dogs really pick up on that innate behavior. And again, you're developing a relationship with this dog. And so positive reinforcement is so critical when you're training. Now, there are a couple other options. You can pay to send your dog somewhere. We have a friend who actually just did that a few months ago, sent it up to overall retriever training in north of Chicago, Matt Mercero, and he sent his dog up there for I think it was about 35 days. They trained the dog, and the nice thing is, after that concludes, you go up there, pick up your dog, and they show you what the next steps are. Okay, here's the commands we've taught. Here's what we've been working on. Here's what you need to continue working on. Now, I'm not sure what he paid. Sometimes you may pay $1,000 a month, maybe more, to send your dog to these places. So it's expensive. But again, you're going to get back a very quality, well trained dog. For
Mhm.
me, I like to work with my dog, so I find the home training quite enjoyable. And again, like Jason said, the first, honestly, probably 4 or 5 months, it was literally like 10 to 15 minutes a day. And then maybe once on the weekend, we'd go out and do, an hour or so and just really, really wear her out. Now, during this, she's getting daily walks and all that stuff, but just upland training, 10, 15 minutes a day goes so far. And there's also a lot of groups that host training days. So I mentioned NAVDA, obviously Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever, and then the German Shorthair Pointer Club of America or of Illinois. A lot of these groups host training days, and it's all designed to bring new people out because they're like us as hunters. They're starting to see their members get older. They're not seeing younger people pick up in this lifestyle, pick up in this industry, and so they're doing things to try to bring in new people to the sport and new people into that lifestyle. And so they host a lot of different dog trainings throughout the year. So definitely look into those.
Yeah, I mean, we just had a coworker find a Beagle Club located near where she lives at, and now it's a bunch of older folks. And she has a hound dog, and she has a spot to go take her hound to go train. And then it's also open to turkey and deer hunting. Her husband got a deer last night on the land, and it was his first time ever going out deer hunting. So there could be these patches of these private, and it was only 50 bucks for the year.
I think 250 for the first year because they like get a key and
Sure. Okay.
yeah.
So yeah, so I mean it's some of the there's some of these little patches of these affordable little dog clubs that are still around that are just old. I mean, she said like of the 9 members, I think 6 of them are in their 70s. I mean, it's like something like that. I mean, it's a really open spot that you can go and really take advantage of and maybe even help keep open moving forward. So
And dog people love sharing their dog, talking about their dog. They're not as bad as horse people. I come from a horse family, so I know horse people quite well. They're not as bad as horse people, but the level of enthusiasm they have for the lifestyle, for the dogs, for the art of it is just fantastic. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to go out to their meetups. And like let's say you live a good public piece of ground that often has field trials is Des Plaines State Fish and Wildlife Area. So it's in Wilmington, Illinois. So just, I don't know, 45 minutes south of Chicago. They have field trials there all the time. And so you can just go out and even watch those dogs and then just talk to those people as they're doing their field trials. It's a very cool world, but it's a great way to just get yourself involved and get yourself started to meet the people who are, of like-minded interests.
mhm.
Yeah, which we pretty much just talked about here.
Yeah,
But
we jumped ahead on that one.
yeah, the best training advice I can give again, start small, little increments, obedience first. I found our dog having a solid fundamental obedience was the best because I could tell the dog to sit and stay, and she would sit and stay. If I had to do all that while also trying to introduce, pheasant set and casting, I feel like that might have been a little overwhelming. And so we actually did take her to obedience training. My wife is a dog trainer on the weekends, and she goes to this place. And so the dogs get very good obedience trained. And I
Mhm.
highly recommend whatever obedience training you go to, try to find one or work with it yourself to get that dog to look at you. Whatever your command is, I like the one whistle because then I can just carry it around in my mouth, quick pheasant whistle, boom, dog's looking at me. It knows to look at my hands. I have a sit command, a down command, a cast command, a find bird. And so I find that very valuable to be able to just get the dog to look at me. And those are a lot of the traits that you can instill early on when that dog is still a puppy. Because if it starts to get, 9 months to a year and doesn't have those solid obedience fundamentals, it can be hard sometimes to break those bad habits. So start obedience early and get that good fundamental background of knowledge and of skills under its belt. And then you can start introducing the scents and things. And again, I mentioned it before, please don't overwhelm your dog with shotgun sounds before it's ready. Start small. It's hard to go backwards if you terrorize that dog by a loud shot too early in its life. It may take a lot of work to get it to be comfortable around it again. But if you start off small and just start introducing loud sounds, treat, you'll have no problems.
That's how I got Merlin. I have Merlin and Arthur are my Experience Spaniels, and Merlin was from, I said his name and I the top steps, but um, he was gun shy. He got gun shy. He was 7 months old, and someone tried hunting with him. He got gun shy, and we adopted both of them because we got him more for being pets because I had Experience Spaniels growing up, so I wanted some. And from the English Experience Spaniel Rescue of America, so Ezra, if you're interested in getting Spaniels, they have them available year round. Anyway, but he was gun shy, and then we got him, and I was really worried about taking him out, and we took him out into the field. We were doing loud noises around him, and stuff. He seemed fine, and the first time we ever took him out, we shot a gun like 30 yards away from him, something like my wife held him, then I walked down to the other end of the field and shot the gun, and I got closer and saw how he was reacting to it, and he was totally fine with that. So. Yeah, he was totally fine after that. We've gone over him since, and he's been fine.
Yeah, just don't
But
overwhelm them.
yeah, just don't overwhelm him. Don't take him out too young, and know what you're doing, for
And
sure.
one thing I do, just because I've heard a few horror stories, and there's always one or two stories that you read throughout the year of somebody overworking their dog to the point that it either has some kind of cardiac episode out in the field. Pay attention to your dog. In my opinion, when my dog starts panting, I know it's not using its nose to the fullest ability. And so I don't want to see that dog pant. Now, again, they're going to pant. They get excited. They're burning energy, but every dog has like a different pant. So my dog has almost two types of pants. One, it's just like a normal, I'm kind of warm, mouth isn't completely open, just very, but then it's got a pant where it's open, the tongue is hanging to the side. When I see that, we're done. We're done. And normally I'm going to sit there for 10 or 15 minutes and let the dog catch its breath before I'll even start walking back to the car. Um, Bring extra water with you. We've all, if you watch, sports, those Gatorade bottles that everybody has that you can squirt from afar, those are my favorite to just throw in a pheasant pack and I can squirt it right into the dog's mouth without having to carry anything. I always carry extra water with me, always carry extra treats. I have a little doggy first aid kit that has like some quick clot type stuff, some eye type stuff, and then some of my dog's medicines. So always keep that kind of stuff on your person and just be prepared. You're taking another life out there. So be cognizant of that and just watch your dog. Make sure you're not overworking your dog. Make sure you're not exhausting your dog. Give it time to go to the bathroom, give it time to take a drink, take a lot of breaks. It's not only is it good for the health of the dog, but it's also better for your hunt. If that dog gets tired and, like I said, starts panting hard, it's not relying on its nose anymore. It's just running. And so it may still kick up a bird, just getting lucky as it runs by it, but you want it to use its nose. So go
Yeah,
slow.
here, especially early season, as it's getting warmer out longer, they're having these upland seasons open up, and it's still 70, 80 degrees outside
Yeah.
when maybe a couple decades ago it was in the 40s and 50s. Just yeah, if it's a warm day out, you got to read your dog's body for sure.
And pay attention to their feet, check their feet after each hunt, and also tick control. Whatever, I'm not a vet. I have no, I trust my vet with that. Talk to your vet. I'm going to pheasant hunt this dog. We are going to be running through paragrasses. We're going to find more ticks than most dogs are exposed to. What do you recommend? Go talk to that with your vet and go through it. And I also do, again, my dogs are long haired. So we put a little orange vest on them too. You don't have to do that. It makes them a little easier to see, but for us, what it does is it's a vest that really covers their brisket, and so it keeps that brisket clean. We still have to, clean their legs and butt and stuff like that, but at least it keeps a bulk of it, kind of seeds of different, plant material that just gets kind of trapped in there. Makes things a little bit easier.
Sure.
But yeah. Well, that's about all we got. Any questions? We'll hang out for another 5 minutes or so, and then we'll take off. But thanks for joining us. So you're free to go if you're willing. Ooh, what about using a bell on the collar? That's a great question. There's kind of two schools of thought. Bells used to be very popular. Now everybody has gone towards these electronic systems that still basically function the same way a bell does. And the main purpose of a bell is just to let everybody on the line know where the dog is at all times. Now, for me, my dogs, the golden retrievers, they're big enough that I don't really worry about that too much. And again, I have them wearing blaze orange and they're orange dogs, so they're pretty well seen. But if you're hunting with like a Boykin Spaniel or one of these smaller dogs that can really get lost in that vegetation, that could be pretty advantageous just to be able to visually hear where that dog is. Now, a lot of these e-collars and GPS units that a lot of the big, high dollar upland hunters are using these days function in a similar way, and that they will just constantly beep every like 1 or 2 seconds, just beep, beep, beep. And it kind of applies the same principle just to essentially be able to locate that dog. And what's really cool about a lot of these collars is if you have a pointer, those collars will actually know when that bird goes on or when that dog goes on point. And it's
Mhm.
basically just, oh, it stopped moving all of a sudden, and it will have a different audible tone. And a lot of times it sounds like a hawk scream. So it's just that very high pitched kind of, I can't do it. I shouldn't even try. But that hawk scream, and the idea is A, it lets every hunter know that that dog's on point. Everybody can hear it.
That's
But
pretty
two,
cool.
the theory is that that hawk sound forces that bird to stay pinned a little bit longer because, oh, there's an avian predator flying around. I'm not going to move. I'm going to hunker down and I'm going to stay here. So either way, the bell or the e-collar, they both serve a similar function, and they're both good. Personally, I don't use one just because I haven't found it necessary.
That's something else to think about too when you're on your line and you're walking through grass that you might not be able to. You try to avoid it, but if you're on grass that's harder than everybody and you're walking in a line, everybody can be making yips and yelps and stuff as they're walking too. So that way you know if you're getting ahead of anybody or
Yeah,
not.
yeah.
So that way you know where your shooters are at too. We had another question, Dan, asking about what type of questions would you ask an outfitter or a guide that has a dog? For instance, is it a flusher or a pointer, and things like that?
That's a good question. So first off, I would ask usually just what breed their dog is. The vast majority of outfitters that you go through are probably going to have pointers. Again, it's that more controlled environment. And when they're taking somebody out new with their dogs, they like to have a little bit more control over the situation. So that's a really good question to ask. And one of the biggest ones I would just ask right up front is, what can you tell me about your dog? I find that question to be so valuable because not only one, do you get to, how do I say this? The type of person I like to hunt with people who are enthusiastic, conservation minded, are fun, love the hobby, love the lifestyle. Not that they're just doing it to earn a buck. The vast majority of outfitters are not doing it to earn a buck. I promise you that. But just very generic questions like that that allow them to talk about their dog, and you can normally see that spark in their eye change. And when that happens, that's normally to me a very good sign. So first question, what kind of breed are we working with? A lot of times they may have some of this stuff just kind of listed on their website, but I'd also ask what kind of habitat are we expecting and what kind of hunt are we going to be doing? A lot of these outfitter type hunts, especially in Illinois, are controlled where they may be releasing birds and then you may go hunt them. In that case, that opens up a lot of opportunities. You may be hunting pheasants, you may be hunting quail, you may be hunting chukar, you may be hunting partridge. And so those are the type of questions I'm personally more interested in asking is what is that hunt going to look like? What's the habitat look like? What are the birds out there? And a lot of times with the controlled pheasant stuff, and again, it's an ethical thing. You make that decision on your own if that's something you're okay with, you're against. A lot of times you're paying per bird, right? So if you go on a pheasant hunt and it's controlled, you are not beholden to the daily bag limits as you were if you were hunting wild birds. So you can harvest more than two birds in a day if you're hunting controlled birds. These are not classed as wildlife, they are classed as basically livestock at that point. And so you're paying per bird. So you can decide, do I want to try to shoot six? Do I want to try to shoot two? And so those are the types of questions I'm more interested in asking is just what's the overall process of your hunt and what are the opportunities and options out there. Oh, another really good question. What about tipping the dog handlers or others that go out with you? That's a fantastic question. Personally, anytime I've ever gone with an outfitter, I always tip. Again, outfitters don't make a ton of money. I'll just be honest. It may seem that way just looking at some of their prices, but you've got to realize they're only hunting. They're only running that business for a few months out of the year. And so personally, I always tip. I have found like 30 to 35% to be what I consider my starting point. I like to come in at 30 to 35%. If they're a great outfitter, I may bump it up as, oh, they put me on something. Oh, they were cool. They helped me and bump it up a percent that way. Every time they may mess up, I may deduct a point. It's kind of like
Yeah.
my dad
Or
at
if
a
they're rude
restaurant.
or
He used to
something.
start at 20%, and every minute his drink was empty. All right, 1% down on a tip. Now I'm not that strict, but I like to start at that 30 and then go up or down depending on the overall quality of the service. But that's a fantastic question. So personally, I like to tip either a dog handler or an outfitter, and especially a dog handler,
Mhm.
because they're just 9 times out of 10, a dog handler is probably not going to accept it anyway. I'll just be honest. But it's nice to offer that. to have it and just say, hey, I really appreciate you doing this. And a lot of times when you take that next step that shows that you truly appreciate what they're doing for you, they may invite you out again. They may say, hey, here's my number. Call me next time you want to go out. I've met several hunters that way just by talking to people in the parking lot. Don't be scared to do it.
And everywhere is different, but it could also be someone who may only be working on tips too. I mean, like it could be owned by someone who has land, and then that person's either renting the field out to hunt in or to guide
Mhm.
in, or be just a seasonal employee for that outfitter who has a dog, and then they just maybe get a certain amount, and then a lot of their amount comes from tips and stuff like that. So definitely something to consider, and if they do a worthwhile job for sure.
Yeah. And again, it largely depends on the outfitter. Sometimes you will literally go there, hunt, they will take your birds away and you will walk away with packaged meat ready to go in your freezer at home. Those are the ones that I'm willing to tip a little bit more. They
Yeah.
took extra time, they took extra care, they used extra resources, and they made my life a lot easier. Now, I do want to go back to that other question because I realized there's a first part of it that I didn't really address. Can you give us a few pointers on what to look for when hiring a handler? I think that's a really interesting question. And for me, a lot of, again, this is all personal preference. I am a huge fan of positive reinforcement. There has been such a long tradition, and I can't remember the guy's name who used to be on TV, who used to do like the alpha, you want to be the alpha male of the dog pack. I have found that style of training to not be as effective. And again, these dogs are my pets. They're in my home 24/7 too. So I want to have a great, I want them to be just as excited to see me as I am them every time.
Is
And
that
so
the
personally,
Sorry,
yeah,
man, Caesar
yeah,
Milan or whatever from Animal Planet
yeah.
from
But you
early
know how a lot of
2000s?
his training relied on being the alpha of
Sure.
that pack. For me, I like the training that's more focused on positive reinforcement and focused more on me building a relationship with my dog. Because for me, that's more important than the dog. If the dog is able to win first place at a state championship, but it doesn't like me and we don't hunt well together, I don't want that dog. I want a dog that I have a personal relationship with that wants to hunt with me just as much as what I hunt. And I have found the positive reinforcement to be very good for that. And I would also ask questions about how they train their dog. Are they training it on hand commands, on whistle commands, or on voice commands? Now that's all a personal preference for you. Every trainer will be a little bit differently. I have a friend who trains German shepherds for a police department in St. Louis. Everything is in German voice commands. Now, would I want that for my upland dog? Absolutely not. And so those are some of the types of questions that I'm asking are what's your philosophy? What's your training regiment? And what do you expect is a reasonable outcome for this dog when it's done with you, whether it's a 1 month, whether it's a 3 month, whether it's a 6 month? What do you envision that dog to be able to do at the end of that course that it cannot do at this moment? And a lot of times that'll kind of help clarify things too.
And then back to the outfitters real quick. I mean, it's like anything else these days, like for reviews and references, like like anything else too.
Yeah. Do you tip the outfitter one amount and let them distribute it, or do you tip each person in the field? So personally, I only tip the people in the field. And a lot of outfitters are that way. We went on a snow goose hunt. Oh, that would have been like last February, March.
Yeah, it was
Not
last
not
spring,
too long. That's
last
the
late
most,
winter. Yeah,
yeah, it's the most recent I've been to an outfitter. So I'll
right.
just kind of use that as an example. And so one thing the owner of the business said when we called and made the reservation, and he said, "Hey, we do like to encourage people to tip the guides." I personally don't really care to tip the owner of the business. I want to tip the person who's out there actively in the field with me. So I tipped the guide. Now, especially on an upland hunt, it'll be set up that way too. The owner may be the guide as well. But for me, I'm more interested in tipping the guide than I am the person who kind of owns the business. I hope that kind of clarifies it.
Yeah, in that case, we like met up at the one location. It was basically a guy's garage, and then this guy was leasing land around the area, and they had snow goose. The big thing there is going to be having a blind to sit in, and also all the decoys. They need
Thousands of
thousands of
decoys.
decoys
Yeah.
to be out in the field, and it's just something that you're not going to have in your garage. I mean, there's none of us have enough room in our personal garage to keep decoys. Like you got to get like storage space. So anyway, so this guy has us all set up, and then each group goes to different fields, and each group has a guide that goes with them. So no one's tipping the owner of the company. Everyone's tipping the individual person who took them out to the field. And he probably had like 7 fields going for the season. So there's 7 individual guides that are going. And then if they do a good job, then they may get more tip than the other person, or vice versa, you know.
Just to even give some more realistic numbers here, I think we paid about 175 to 200 a person to be in a blind, and I tipped $50. Jason tipped 50, so we gave him $100, and
Mhm.
everybody else in the blind tipped as well. So again, because they're waking up at like 3 in the morning, they're out there with you. And the really nice thing about a guide or going through an outfitter like that, they're taking all the work away from you. You just get to show up and do the fun part. They're taking all the scouting, all the gear prep, all the dog, all that stuff they're taking care of. And so for me, I find it important to compensate them for that for sure. And personally, I don't think the hunts do that, especially these days with inflation and everything else. So
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of tipping. Most, and that's kind of very commonplace, is like 20 to 30% is a pretty reasonable tip for any kind of outfitter or guide.
Cool. Any other questions at all? If not, we'll get out of here.
Yeah,
Good
well, thanks
question.
for joining us tonight, and
Hmm.
hopefully we'll see you. And again, I just want to urge everybody, check out Pheasants Forever. If you're just looking to meet like-minded individuals, obviously we're the Illinois Learn to Hunt program. We're here to help you get started. But we can only do so much. The nice thing about Pheasants Forever is basically every county in the state has a chapter in that county or very close to it. So check them out, because you're going to meet like-minded people who have similar interests, and probably people who have a lot more experience dealing with dogs and with dog training than either of us do. These people have been doing it, 40, 50 years in many cases, and are wanting to share and to pass on that knowledge to the next generation. So definitely check out Pheasants and Quail Forever, and give them a good shout. They're a great group. They do a lot of work putting habitat back on the ground, but they do a lot of mentored hunts, a lot of wing shooting clinics, a lot of dog trainings. So definitely big plug for Pheasants Forever. But thanks everybody for joining us tonight. We'll get out of here, and hopefully we'll see you in a prairie someday soon.
Real quick, Dan.
Yeah.
Someone said I hope you do more of these. We don't have any more upland, I think, coming up, but I do know we have at least trapping and waterfowl coming up in November. So if you want to do some
Yeah, and
more,
then we're gonna put some deer ones. We'll probably get them scheduled, I would bet, in the next week or two, especially getting, going through each stage of rut and what you can do to get ready for the big deer season. That's, oh my gosh, it's October. It's already started.
it's
Oh,
already started. What are we doing here?
if
But yeah, just go to a link. What Eventbrite is the website that we
you
use.
just go to learntohuntil.com and click on upcoming events, it'll take you right there.
Yep, and I was gonna say you can even subscribe on Eventbrite, and I think it flags whenever we put up anything new too. So just apply the same way you did to get into here. You can get into all the other ones too. So everything's free.
Perfect.
Come on out. See you guys.
All right. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.